What's up, everyone? Welcome to the first ever show on the Daily Fan Racing YouTube channel. My name is Ryan Larkin, founder of Daily Fan Racing. With this YouTube channel, we're looking to reach out to as many NASCAR DFS and betting fans as possible, and then help support the Daily Fan Racing website. I appreciate you guys for checking out the show. Hopefully, you'll stay with us throughout the year. The main course for our channel is going to be a NASCAR DFS betting show every Thursday at 9 o'clock. That'll be live. And we'll have two hosts with me every single week. And I'll go ahead and introduce them. The first one's going to be Jason, FreeNASCARDFS. Everyone probably knows who he is at this point. But Jason's been working with me on a bunch of stuff for a while now, it feels like. And he's big help. I love doing stuff with him. We go back and forth. We have a good competitive nature to our talk, our talks, and we try really hard, but at the end of the day, we're doing it to try to have fun and give people good insight and hopefully win them some money. I mean,
we agree on everything mostly all the time, right?
Yeah.
We always see the races the exact same way. There'll be no arguments. There'll be no seeing things the wrong way. Thanks for the introduction. Like I said, free NASCAR DFS. I didn't realize I was signing up for a betting show, though. I didn't realize that's the advice we were given. I'm a DFS guy, so this is news to me. So, but no, we'll definitely, it's going to be a lot of fun this season. And I appreciate you asking me to do this for you. And obviously, I jumped on board the minute you asked me. So thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. I love going back and forth with you, mainly because we can give each other noise and kind of get after each other. But at the end of the day, we're all good and we're men about it, you know.
I'm not going to be upset.
That's my favorite part about it, is just needling each other. We have different opinions sometimes. Sometimes we both love Tyler Reddick and he kills us, but I really enjoy that aspect. So I'm glad you're joining me and look forward to the year. And then next up, the man of the hour right now in the betting space. All the attention's on him, not for good reasons, but the attention's on him. GordoGambles, who has been a really cool guy to talk with over the past year or so. We both run MMA season-long leagues. We do a lot of things similar, and so we just kind of connected that way. And then we started talking about UFC fights. I got his opinion a lot. Then when he was about to win his big contest, he started emailing me or messaging me and saying, "Hey, what do you think of this?" And I was like, "Dude, I had no clue. I just don't want to screw you up." And but it was a lot of fun. And then I was like, "Man, I really need someone to host stuff for me who's got a good delivery, who's going to be there every week, and is a good dude." And so Gordo was the first guy I reached out to, and he instantly said yes. So thank you for joining me. And I'm going to turn everything over to you now. All this speaking in the beginning, I'm not doing it anymore. It's all yours.
Yeah, well, thank you for the introduction. And when you asked me to join and you're like, "Man, just come on, just host, just talk." I'm like, yeah, I can do one thing, and that's talk. And this is also a great opportunity for me too, because as you guys all know, I'm a UFC guy, right? So this NASCAR thing is something I've really looking to get into, and what better way to do so than with these two minds with me right here. So I'm really looking forward to not only learning about the sport and the way it's scored on DFS, but also a betting aspect to it as well. And really just look at enjoying it more, look at making some money off of it. And I really think we can do that with us three right here. So I appreciate you for inviting me. And Jason, it's been great to meet you as well. I know we're going to make some good money over the course of 2023. So without further ado, I say we jump right into it. And again, this is a show on the Daily Fan Racing account. So shout out to them. Make sure to check out everything below down there. But let's get into it. Let's answer some questions, because for all those watching who don't know much about NASCAR, who have a few questions, I'm going to be your best friend, because I'm going to be looking to pick these guys' brains and be looking to talk to them, be looking over to really see what's going on. And this is a perfect way to get into that. This is kind of my introduction to see, all right, what can I pick up on? What kind of cues can I ask you guys throughout the following weeks? And I think the main thing starts with really the general rules of something like DraftKings or something like the FanDuel or fantasy type of things, just like that. So we're sitting here, especially for me who plays other sports, and I'm wondering, okay, I see the format, I see the salaries. What are the main rules and main things you look to attack here when you're playing NASCAR DFS? So Ryan, if you can throw up those rules for me, I'd love to have you guys talk me through it and talk me through to see what are the main things we're looking for when we're playing some DraftKings here.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing is you kind of have to have an understanding of scoring. That's probably the first and most important aspect, aside from knowing the lineup construction beginning aspects, which is there's 6 roster spots and you have $50,000 to spread throughout that. that's just like every other sport, basically. You know, MMA has the exact same formula, basically. NFL, you obviously have more players, but you're kind of built under the same restrictions. So with NASCAR, it's really about hitting on a couple of key players or drivers mainly, and then that comes from understanding, though, the scoring. And at the top there, place differential's a big part of it, but fastest laps and laps led is a super crucial part as well. So place differential, you get 1 point for moving forward a position from where you qualify, and then you lose a point if you lose a spot. So if you qualify 20th and finish 19th, you're going to have a place differential point. If you finish 21st, you're going to have a negative 1 place differential point. And of course, if you start 38th and you finish first, you're going to have 37 place differential points. So it's simple math there. I like that it's 1 point, whereas FanDuel has a half point, makes the math a little bit harder. But the full point there makes it pretty simple. And then the biggest key to NASCAR DFS is understanding the fast laps and the laps led bonus points is what I call them, but the dominator points, which is what most of the people in the industry call them now. Understanding those and understand where they're going to accumulate throughout the race, and understand that that is the focal point of our lineup. And I'll let Jason kind of take over on that because it's such an integral part of lineup building is understanding what dominators you need, how many you need, and kind of going from there.
Yeah, like you said, you touched on dominator points, and they are definitely huge, massive when you're talking DFS, but it's also, it really varies week to week, and that's what kind of makes NASCAR DFS special, is I know most weeks in NFL, you know, you'll have different guys of value that'll ruin the slate or make the slates different, you know, but NASCAR, not only do you get that aspect, but you also get the fact that the laps totals change every single week. Some weeks you'll go to a track where you can get 90 laps. Some tracks you're going to go, some weeks you're going to have a track where you do 500 laps. So obviously that varies with the amount of points that are available in the slate, right? So the more laps that you have on a track or a race, the more important those dominator points are going to be, and the more guys you're going to want to target in your lineup that have the ability to get those dominator points. Vice versa, the less laps, so if you're going to a road course that has 60 laps, dominator points are not important there. So stacking a bunch of high-priced guys hoping to get dominator points isn't the route to go. You're going to want to target the position differential, right? Those guys that can come from the back, score 20 to 30 position differential points. Those are going to be the types of guys to carry your lineup. So it really fluctuates week to week depending on those lap totals.
Okay, interesting. And I apologize in advance because I am a UFC player, so I might reference this a bit throughout. But when we're looking at these salaries, I know you mentioned them, and especially for someone who plays a simple sport like UFC, where the guy with the highest implied win percentage is the most expensive, how do we really determine which drivers are going to be the most expensive on the slate week in, week out? Because I know when I was doing these videos with Larkin earlier, you saw these salaries, and usually the similar guys were the top despite previous performance, but sometimes a lot of them fluctuate. And I was really wondering what makes it so a fighter is priced the way it is.
So in NASCAR, they do try to go off of the odds. So the betting odds from Vegas will still kind of have some input on the salaries, especially for the top drivers. And that's a lot of the reason why you saw Denny Hamlin. I know when we did it last year, Denny Hamlin was the guy every week. And I was like, why the hell is he still the highest priced guy when the last 5 weeks he hasn't shown it? And a lot of that was understanding the track type. Obviously, there's at this point 4 or 5 different track types you can kind of separate different tracks into. And he was dominant on intermediates. Speed-wise, the results might not have been there, but speed-wise, he was consistently the best pretty much throughout the year. So Vegas was looking at that speed, understanding the context of it, and even though he wasn't necessarily delivering for DFS or delivering for wins or anything like that, it was still the context that, hey, he has the ability to do so. And with NASCAR, unlike MMA, I know going into, Kamaru Usman's fights, that dude's going to land 6-7 takedowns. He's going to sit on top of him. He's going to pound him out, and he's going to score 120 points, right? I can pretty much write that in almost every fight unless someone gets a head kick KO randomly. NASCAR is not like that. We have any given week, we had 18, 19 race winners last year on a 36-win schedule. So anybody can win within the top 25 cars or so, 25, 30 teams. And there could be a lot of dominators, and those dominators can be spread across Penske or Hendrick or, any of these organizations. And 1 week it may be, JGR with Hamlin, and the next week it may be HMS. So it fluctuates a lot, and a lot of it is, I don't want to say a guessing game, But it is trying to take as much information as you can and then sprinkle that, and that's where multiple lineups really matter in NASCAR. I feel like if you can play 3 or 5, it gives you a better chance to at least hit on that main dominator. But man, it can be difficult to hone in on who's going to be that guy outside of a short practice session and things like that.
I think when it comes to like determining price, I think a lot of times, I mean, they go up by odds, but man, sometimes I think DraftKings just gets drunk and makes prices sometimes. I mean, especially last year, I felt like Larkin, they were putting a lot of weight in like years past results on tracks with this new car and weighing guys heavy who performed well last year. It's like a whole totally different car, right? So I think we was able to play. Hopefully, they'll probably clean that up this year, but it's like everything, they're the odds are there, and if you stack up the odds with how they do the salaries, most of the time it lines up exactly how DraftKings places their odds. That's who they're going to price higher.
Yeah, for sure. And like what he was saying last year, it just seemed like, man, sometimes they're not paying attention. And we see that with NFL, though. We see that with other sports where, a tight end can be killing it and he's still 3,000. And then meanwhile, George Kittle scores 4 points, 5 straight games, and he's that second highest priced tight end, right? Sometimes they just leave pricing alone. Sometimes they don't adjust properly. Sometimes you get really good value as a result in NASCAR from that. So you always got to pay attention and see if someone's not getting the respect that they deserve.
And I think the other important thing to remember about the pricing when DraftKings does their pricing, they're usually releasing it on Wednesday night, right? So that's before qualifying even happens, before practice even happens for these guys. So again, naturally, you're going to find with NASCAR DFS, the way it tends to be is they'll put those salaries out on Wednesday, and you're going to have a guy who qualifies in the back, who is a strong guy who just ends up being chalk. And it ends up being, there's a lot of chalk a lot of times in NASCAR, but that's just the way it is with getting those salaries out before qualifying, before practice.
All right. Yeah, I didn't realize that because we did do those live streams, Thursday morning, I think, Ryan. And a lot of the things you were saying was you have to be careful what you play because it will change based off their placement. But I got another question for you here, Jason, especially since I've picked Ryan's brain a lot. I'm going to pick yours a bit here too. You look at again, MMA reference, you look at the UFC slate, you guy up top there, you want a guy who can finish and has finish potential. And that's a guy you're going to target, right? We look here on NASCAR and you know what, as someone who is newer, the first thing you think is, all right, are you trying to target the guys who are just going to finish first place, or what's the real logic behind finding those targets that you want to have in your core lineups?
Yeah, definitely. If you're looking to take down GPPs, you're most likely going to have the winner. Forgive me, but I'm not a UFC guy. So, right. So, and I don't play much UFC DFS. So I imagine like the winning, you're looking for the guy who's probably going to score the most points on the slate, right? And with NASCAR, that guy's going to be your dominator, right? It tends to be, especially when you have these races where there's 300, 400, 500 laps, right? I think that performance is that guy who can go out there and is going to lead 200 to 300 laps, who is going to carry your team. Like, it doesn't really matter sometimes in those instances what the rest of your team does. If you got that guy, you're most likely going to get carried away to the cash line. So I think getting the dominator right in a race is probably your most important thing to do. If you hit that, then you'll either min cash or everything else will fall into place perfectly, and you'll hit that big GPP win.
Yeah, for sure. And so, when you do simple math, a lot of times when you look at what I call the stud drivers, they're going to score about 50 to 60 points. They're not going to get a ton of dominator points. They'll get a few fast laps, and they'll finish top 5 or 6 or 7 or so. And they'll score 55, 60 points. There'll be a group of 4 or 5 of those in every race, and they'll score really well, but they're not your dominators. They're not the core guys. The dominators are going to separate themselves literally from the entire field, and not by just 10 points, but by 30 or 40 points. So all of a sudden, your main dominator is going to score 90 or 100 points, and you're literally going to offset an entire driver's worth of points. So, when we look for value plays, we're looking for 30 points out of them sometimes. Well, that dominator just gave you those 30 points if you had them. So it really separates you. And then, some races, they're going to be super chalky, and those are the ones that hurt. But when you can hit that dominator at a low percentage, you have that shot to really change things up. And that's where ownership projections are key, and understanding the context of the slate and where you can leverage things out, obviously. And maybe we'll get more into that and NASCAR 102 or something that's a little bit more advanced. But, for the basics, you're really just looking to look at practice times, to look at past track type history, last year we only have 1 year with this car, and to hone in on who's going to dominate. And if that guy's 11,000, then you go out there and you find a way to afford them. If it's a 500 lap race and there's 2 people that are $11,000, you find a way to afford them both. They are so far and away more important than the salary in a lot of instances. And you can punt to the lowest price guy in the slate who sucks. That way you can afford those dominators. And that's kind of the key of NASCAR, is understanding the laps, how many fast laps late could be taken by a dominator, and then how much that can upset a slate.
And I say the other benefit to those dominator points, to those fast laps and laps led points, is we will talk a lot this season about NASCAR and about the fluctuation of finishes and how crazy they can be. And we will have a bunch of bad beats, I'm sure. But the good thing about those dom points is they don't go away, right? If you have a guy that collects 30 dominator points for the race, if he wrecks on the last lap, you're still getting those 30 dominator points. So there's a nice safe floor with those guys as well when they accumulate those points.
Yep.
All right. Well, I know we mentioned the 102, the NASCAR DFS 102, and maybe we're going to get into that later. Again, I feel like this is a good way to start, especially for someone who like me, who has, the basic grip of it, and who's looking to learn some things. So I know there are going to be some more videos out on this channel. Take a look out for that in the future. But right now, I have one main question. This is something I wanted to ask Ryan a lot over the last year that we've been doing videos together. But for me, my biggest struggle is differentiating between what kind of lineup I'm going to make, whether it be a tournament entry lineup, a single entry, a multi-entry, or a cash lineup here. What really solidifies each one of those plays as one of their own? Like what is calling out your name when you're making a cash lineup, or what are you looking for when you're making a single entry lineup? What is one of those big differentiators for you guys?
So for NASCAR, it feels pretty normal or pretty standard once you kind of have the gist of what's going on. And most people who subscribe to any site, whether it be mine or any other site, can pretty much use the projections to understand how to build a cash lineup. And that's, you're going to hone in on the highest owned drivers, especially ones that are going to be dominator potential. And you're trying not to hurt yourself to the field, because in NASCAR, unlike MMA, where if I know there's like Umar Nurmagomedov, and that, sorry about the pronunciation, he's going to be heavily on this week in cash, right? Like people are going to swallow him up. Strickland's going to be swallowed. You have to play Strickland in cash because he's the favorite and he's 7,700, right? In NASCAR, you're not going to see a 80% cash number. Usually you're going to see more of a 50% cash number in terms of your higher end owned guys. And when that guy dominates, it's wonderful in cash, but in GPP, if he's super owned as well, you're going to struggle to min cash in a lot of instances. So you're trying to balance the ownership numbers, but you still have to hit the dominator sometimes. You still have to balance all the contextual things of how people can score, how the lineup builds. And a lot of times, unfortunately, in NASCAR, the cash line in the cash contest is higher than a tournament. And that's one of the reasons I do shy away from cash sometimes. It's just because the way it sets up, if, in Xfinity, I know Noah Gregson's going to dominate and I know Ty Gibbs are going to dominate, and those are the two guys and everyone's going to be on them, it's very hard for me to differentiate in cash and to win. It's like a MMA 1v1 or 2v2 that just makes it not fun. And then if one thing happens, you're not cashing, right? So I do go more GPP or single entry. Single entry, you try to make that one swap to get a low ownership guy. Last year, Brett did David Starr and won $7,500, right? He did that one switch to David Starr, who's lower owned. Boom. And you do it. You don't want to get too far away from the chalk and single entry either. And then in tournaments, you want to get really crazy. A lot of times you still got to hit that dominator. And if the chalk guy is the guy that you need, you got to play him. But I know guys that'll go 100%. When they're doing MME, they'll go 100% on the guy and they'll say he's either going to give me leverage one way or the other, but so be it. And a lot of times you're just looking for that leverage. And if Denny Hamlin's going to be 11,000 and he's going to be 45% owned, do you want to be above that or below that? And that's probably the biggest thing with single entry versus larger tournaments. A single entry, I'm probably going to just plug Hamlin in, whereas in the other ones, I'm going to try to be different and leverage that number.
Yeah, I think the keys like to keep in mind when you're constructing lineups, when you're building lineups for DFS, right, is we've talked a lot about dominator points, but those position differential points are a lot of times are more predictable. So at least with me, when I'm building cash lineups, I'm more leaning heavily towards those position differential builds, especially on your intermediates and your tracks where you're looking at like 260 laps or lower. Because even in that instance, like hitting the dominator is great, but we see those intermediate tracks be so unpredictable. Most of the time, that chalk dominator that everybody's on ends up busting anyway in cash. So like, I don't think you got to jam in the dominators on those tracks, but obviously, yeah, the 400 laps, the 500 laps, you definitely are going to have to hit those dominators. And I try to steer away from cash games in those higher laps, those 400 laps, those 500 laps races. I think you do that as well, Larkin. That's just you got to hit those dominators and those. I like the cash games for me. Stick to those higher owned position differential guys. And again, in GPP, you can use the counter to that, right? If we know the position differential guys are going to be the higher owned plays, then those guys starting in that 8th, 9th, 10th through 15th range are going to be those lower owned plays who can still have that upside to finish top 5, score big at like a 5-6% ownership. So that's where you can find your leverages, generally speaking, right?
And I really like that point because like with a 400 or 500 lap race, if you miss the dominator, you're screwed. But if you hit it, would you rather have your money in a cash game where you can only double up, or would you rather have it in a big contest where you can win big? And if I need to play to hit a dominator, I want it in a tournament. I want it to win me big money when it hits. And that's, so I completely agree with that. I stay away from cash and anything probably over 267, basically any 400-mile races. I stay away from cash for the most part, unless it's super obvious. And then, the lower stuff like road courses, super speedways. We got the first race at Daytona. We're going to talk a lot about playing the back, avoiding the wrecks, playing it safe, getting a nice score to catch those cash lineups. Every race is different. Every track type gives you a different,
Daytona
layout.
start the last 6 positions and play it in cash and print money every Daytona 500.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean,
that easy.
I know everyone saw the betting slip that won $1 million last year from Daytona, where, the guy literally played it. All those guys had the chance to finish top 10. Like if you said, yeah, I think David Reagan's going to finish top 10, I would say, yeah, that makes sense. But to pick 4 of them like he did was kind of crazy. And it needed the perfect storm. It needed to rain in turns 1 and 2, and it needed to have the field direct. But it happened. And that's something that does happen at Daytona. And, those are things you have to take account for. Whereas at a road course, the likelihood of you losing half a field is not very high. So every race changes. The lap total changes things.
Unless it rains.
Unless it rains. Man, that Portland race for Xfinity Series last year was crazy.
Are they going to race on rain this year on short tracks? I saw they're bringing wet tires to the short tracks this year.
I hope so. I mean, they tear shit up anyway, so why not?
It might make the short track racing good this year if they did that.
I was trying not to cuss too. I'm sorry.
I'm glad you did it before me. I was going to ask beforehand if we were cussing on the channel or not.
You know what? As the host, I'm just going to take away your speaking powers for right now. No, I'm just playing. This is something that I think we've covered a lot so far, and we're sitting here at the 23-minute mark. I'm going to ask you guys one final question, then we're going to wrap up out of here. So anything you guys want to add it on to this question right here, because I think we've got some great intel so far. But there's one last question I'm going to ask you guys is, as someone who's getting into the NASCAR DFS for the first time, or someone who is a bit of a beginner, what are some final words of advice you'd give them?
I'll let Jason take this one first.
Run. No, I would say the best thing is obviously play with money that you can afford to lose. Because NASCAR DFS, as much as we come on here and try to pretend like we know everything, like this is one of the most unpredictable sports you can do. Because not only do you have athletes behind the wheel, and that can be unpredictable, but you have cars on the track. Shit goes wrong with those. You have guys racing cars who get in wrecked. I'm sorry, I cussed again. And can take out. I mean, it's a very volatile DFS sport, but I tell you what, there is nothing funner than the swings that come in NASCAR DFS. Watching that ticker and seeing you're winning thousands of dollars, 30 laps in, and then swinging down to losing and then swinging up. I mean, take your heart medication, buckle up. If you're playing NASCAR DFS for the first time this season, like it's going to be a long ride, but we're going to have fun.
Yeah, I think to piggyback on that, in all DFS, I should open every video like this with these words is play within your means, but also play within bankroll structure. Make sure you're not playing more than, say, 10%. That's the rule I go by. Don't play more than 10% of your bankroll, because in 1 week, basically don't put $30,000 down on Kamaru Usman praying to – sorry, Gloria. But you know what I'm saying? Like, you don't want to go in there. If you have $500, you don't want to play $200 on a race. If you lose that, you've lost 40% of your bankroll. And if you do it again in 2 weeks, you're down to $100. If you have $500, play $50. Build it slowly. Most people do not profit at DFS in any sport. It's really hard. And so I want to tell anybody who's playing, play within your means, but also play smart. Play so over the course of 10 weeks, hopefully it bounces out. Over the course of a year, you'll still be in the game. And hopefully over the course of a 36-week year, you've hit big, and that's your profit. There'll be months where you'll break even. There'll be months where you're down 10%, 20%, and there'll be months where you're up 10, 20%. And that's the fluctuations of how it works and the craziness of NASCAR. So that's the most important part. And then take in as much information as you can to understand and learn the basics. If you're new to it, grab this show, grab other shows. I'm sure Jason's going to have free content all year because, as his name suggests, it's free NASCAR DFS. Grab
free
those
for the masses.
Free for the masses, and just understand all the nuances before you go playing big. I still don't play big. One, because I'm not comfortable as a human doing it. I'm afraid of losing a bunch of money in one day. It makes me feel sick. Playing $500 when I did it, a few times, I was just like, this sucks. The feeling's worse than when I play 75 and win 50 or win 100, right? Like, it just feels better to me. So it's just all about playing with your means, but understand as much as you can. Understand the scoring. First place gets 46, 10th place gets what it gets, and go from there and map out lineups. I had a notepad when I first got into it. I had a notepad, and I would project each driver for where I thought they were going to finish, and I would do the math. And optimizers now that do that stuff, you can plug and play into different stuff. But I did a notepad when NASCAR first came out, and it worked for me, and it was great. Do the basics and then understand lineup construction and play small until you know how everything works. The biggest thing is not to jump into the deep end, because you will get swallowed.
For sure. I bring us all back. Oh, go ahead.
Use the data that's there. Like, we have a year of data now with this new car, which we didn't have last year. So use that data, average laps, fast laps, driver rating, look at stuff like that. The masses are going to flock to finishing position, right? Look at those things that indicate how the person drove in the race, average position, driver rating, things like that.
And be adaptive. Things are going to change. Last year, teams started off bad. They got really good later in the year. It changes fluidly with NASCAR. It can change in 4 weeks. Things could be completely different. So you just have to be on top of it and be conditioned not to focus on, oh man, this guy finished 5th 3 straight races. Yeah, but they'd have to field wreck in those races. Like, it's understanding the context, and that's where I think you can find people that do have an edge, content creators that have an edge, is they understand the context. They understand, yeah, he finished 5th, but all the guys that were running top 10 wrecked.
Yeah.
All the guys that were running towards the front had issues, and all of a sudden this guy got up front. Eric Jones won Darlington, and he was really, really good throughout the race, and he deserved that win. Don't get me wrong, but he ran 8th to 12th. He was an 8th to 12th place car, and the differences between everyone is so close now that the second he got out front, he was a race-winning car. And, situationally, it worked out perfect for him. He got out front, and he won the race, and no one would have picked that. It was his only win this year. It's not like he was a super threat to win many other races, but those things happen. And then you got to kind of say, okay, well, that win probably isn't indicative of what he's going to do every week. He's not really can contend for wins. So you just kind of have to understand the context of everything, and then reach out to people, learn things, and then go from there.
Watch the show.
Watch the show. I like it. I like it.
For sure. And this is a show that will have a betting show each and every week, but also we're going to have a couple installments of this NASCAR DFS 101, 102. We're going to talk about it. And I appreciate all the input we've gotten here, because I've definitely learned a lot. Hopefully you guys as well. And as we exit this show, the very first installment on the Daily Fan Racing YouTube channel, I'd like to say thank you for everybody for tuning in. Thank you for these guys for teaching me some more. This is a perfect time to hit the like button down below, subscribe to the channel, make sure you are showing some support to us. We're trying to make you guys money, or at least the 2 people with me right here. I'm just the good looks, right? So as we leave you guys for a 30-minute video, I'd love to have you guys just plug your stuff, where can the people show you some love? And let's go start with you, Larkin.
First off, my dad's from Michigan. I'm a Michigan fan, so that hoodie is trash.
That's why
but both of us are trash right now watching that championship game, knowing we could have been better than TCU, right? But anyways, Larkin8 on Twitter. I'm Larkin8 everywhere. I've owned that on like every site ever. Follow me there. I'm one away from 1900. I'd love to get to 2000 before Daytona. That'd be great. Jason's almost at 10. I know he wants 10,000 before Daytona. That'd be killer. Daily Fan Racing is where all the content's going to be. We're going to have a full premium slate, everything from Xfinity, trucks, Cup, and then also F1. We completely cover F1 as well. Got 2 or 3 people joining the team this year. We're expanding, giving as much content. I think we'll give more content than any other site out there, bar none. So if you're a racing fan, between the 2 series, we're going to have you covered. And last year was super, super successful. I was shocked by how many subscribers we got out the gate, and then we won a lot of money. So I was really proud of that. So you catch us there. But biggest thing, subscribe to this YouTube channel. At the very least, get the free video every week and the free stuff. We got a free newsletter out there that we're going to put a couple contents out, a couple things every week. You know, we're trying to get more into the free game to give you guys more stuff out there. And then I know you love it, Jason. But that's it. Just follow along on the Twitter. I'll push everything out there so you guys can catch it when it comes out.
Yeah, and you guys can find me on Twitter at DFS NASCAR, FreeNASCARDFS. My weekly article was out every week before the races. I normally release it every Sunday morning, 8 a.m. with a breakdown of the slates. That's at Run Pure Sports, totally free. I've already started trickling out some content on my Twitter page. I'm doing a breakdown of every track type from 2022. Already went through a couple of track types. So follow those threads. If you follow me, you can see that information as we lead up to the season. I'm going to have a season preview breakdown coming out on Run Pure Sports in the next couple of weeks as well. So be on the lookout for that. And that's it. That's where you can find my stuff at.
Perfect. Well, that 32-minute mark, we sit here. For me, myself, GordoGambles, I may not be the best NASCAR follow, but I'm going to get there, guys. I'm going to get there. I'm going to learn. I'm going to learn from you guys. My stuff is at GamblesGordo on Twitter, at Plays and Fade Sports on YouTube. But you can also hear my beautiful voice on the Daily Fan MMA podcast, me and Brett Apley on Thursdays as well. So check that out. And while you're at it, of course, check out the Daily Fan Racing section as well. Well, that's going to do it for us here. Make sure to check out the other installments of the NASCAR DFS show, 101, 102, 103, maybe. Who knows? But just subscribe down below, hit the like button. We appreciate all your views. We appreciate your support. And let's make some money, guys. Cheers.
See you guys. Thanks.